The holographic display flickered with Ambassador Kellen Voss's final transmission, his face carved with deep lines of exhaustion and rage. Commander Nia Corinth watched the recording. For the 13th time, her knuckles white against the armrest of her command chair aboard the UES Gravestone. The bridge crew maintained their silence, but she could feel their collective fury radiating like heat from a forge. They desecrated our memorial ships. Voss's recorded voice echoed through the bridge. 300,000 souls. Commander, the entire Kepler incident memorial fleet reduced to scrap metal and mockery. The Hegemony's Vexthari delegation didn't just refuse our request for a proper burial site. They laughed. The transmission showed the aftermath. Twisted metal sculptures made from human memorial vessels, arranged in grotesque parodies of Earth's graveyards. The Vexthari had taken the ashes of humanity's war dead and scattered them across their capital. World's entertainment districts like litter. Worse still, they broadcast the entire spectacle across 17 star systems. As a demonstration of human weakness, Corinth's tactical officer, Lieutenant Raven Blackthorn, stepped forward. Her cybernetic eye word as it focused on the display. Ma'am, the Vexthari consider death rituals a sign of evolutionary weakness. Their species doesn't mourn they consume their dead for nutrients. To them, our memorial traditions are primitive. Corinth tasted the word like poison. She'd lost her brother at Kepler, watched his transport vaporized by hegemony plasma cannons during the evacuation. His ashes had been aboard the memorial ship Remembrance. Now those ashes decorated some alien nightclub floor. Her communications officer, Ensign Marcus Grimm, cleared his throat. Commander, we're receiving priority transmissions from Earth Command, the Colonial Defense Force, and he paused, checking his console. 47 different human settlements. They're all saying the same thing, which is, make them pay. Corinth stood, her uniform crisp despite 3 days without sleep. Through the bridge's viewport, she could see the assembled fleet, 237 vessels from every human faction, military and civilian alike, mining barges retrofitted with plasma cannons, corporate security frigates loaded with experimental weapons, even converted passenger liners carrying families of the dead, armed with whatever they could. Scavenged. The diversity was staggering. Martian deep space hunters flew alongside Jovian corporate executives. Asteroid miners worked side by side with Terra Nova's elite guard. The Kepler incident had united humanity in grief. 3 years ago, today, desecration had united them in rage. Sir, Blackthorn said, Admiral Thorne's requesting permission to begin the assault. The fleet is ready. Corinth shook her head. Not yet. We do this right, or we don't do it at all. She activated the fleet-wide communication system. All vessels, this is Commander Corinth aboard the Gravestone. Today, the Vexthari will learn what happens when you mock the human way of death. She paused, looking at the holographic tactical display showing the Vexthari home system. 3 inhabited worlds, 17 defensive stations, and their prize, Vexthal Prime, where the desecration had taken place. The planet's 7 moons hung like pale fruit, ripe for harvest. They think death makes us weak, she continued, her voice carrying across the fleet. They're about to discover that death makes us dangerous. We're not here for conquest. We're not here for resources. We're here to ensure that every time the Vexthari look up at their night sky, they see the faces of our dead staring back at them. The tactical display updated, showing weapon signatures coming online across the human fleet. Torpedo tubes loaded with specialized payloads, mining lasers recalibrated for combat. Most importantly, the cargo holds of converted funeral barges, filled with a very particular type of ammunition. Corinth smiled grimly. Today, we make monuments of moons. The Vexthari patrol squadron detected the human fleet 3 hours before. Weapons range. Commander Corinth watched the alien vessels emerge from behind Vexthal Prime's largest moonsleek. Bioorganic ships that pulse with bioluminescent patterns along their hulls, beautiful in their way, like predatory jellyfish. Drifting through the void, 18 vessels, reported Blackthorn, her cybernetic eye tracking their movement patterns. Dreadnought-class bioships armed with plasma sacs and neural disruptors. They're trying to establish a communication link. Put them through. The main display filled with the image of a Vexthari. Commander, its translucent blue skin shifting through patterns of aggressive coloration. 6 arms gestured dismissively, while its oval head bobbed with what humans had learned to recognize as contempt. When it spoke, the universal translator rendered its chittering voice into cold, mechanical words. Human creatures, You trespass. In sacred feeding grounds, turn your metal corpse ships around, or we will add your nutrients to the consumption pools. Corinth stepped forward, her hands clasped behind her back. I am Commander Naya Corinth, representing the species you recently insulted. We're here to discuss proper burial protocols. The Vextharius skin flashed bright orange amusement. The death worshippers return. Do you bring more metal coffins for our artists? The sculptures made from your memorial ships have brought great joy to our younglings. Every human on the bridge tensed. Grimm's hand moved toward his sidearm. Blackthorn's augmented fingers tightened on her tactical console, but Corinth remained perfectly still. Actually, she said conversationally, we brought something else entirely. The first human torpedo struck the lead Vexthari vessel before the alien commander could respond. But this wasn't an ordinary warhead. The plasma charge contained compressed carbon and metallic fragments specifically designed to embed in bioorganic hull structures. As the explosion faded, the alien ship drifted, its hull studded with thousands of metal shards that glinted like stars. What have you? The commander began, but its transmission cut off as 17 more torpedoes found their marks. The Vexthari squadron responded with typical efficiency, their ship's plasma sacs glowing as they prepared to return fire. But the humans weren't done. The converted mining barges opened their cargo holds, releasing clouds of metallic debris into space fragments of the memorial ships, each piece engraved with names and dates of the dead. All vessels, execute morning protocol. Corinth commanded. The human fleet scattered, using the debris field as cover. The Vexthari plasma blasts meant to sweep them aside instead struck the floating memorial. Fragments, each impact sending cascades of sparks through the void. The effect was oddly beautiful, like fireworks at a funeral, but beauty wasn't the point. As the Vexthari ships maneuvered through the debris field, their bioorganic hulls began to change. The embedded metal fragments weren't just decorative, they were designed to interact with Vexthari biotechnology, slowly poisoning the living tissue of their vessels. Commander, Blackthorn shouted over the combat alerts. Their lead ship is losing cohesion. The biomatrix is breaking down. Through the viewports, they could see the alien vessel beginning to convulse, its bioluminescent patterns flickering. Erratically, the living ship was dying, poisoned by the memory of human dead. The remaining Vexthari vessels abandoned their attack formations, retreating toward their homeworld's defensive perimeter. But they couldn't escape the spreading cloud of memorial fragments. Each piece of debris carried with it the molecular signature of human grief, a toxin specifically engineered to corrupt Vexthari biotechnology. Grimm opened a channel to their fleet. Corinth ordered. The alien commander's image returned, but now its skin showed patterns of distress, rapid shifts between yellow and purple. Behind it, crew members chittered in obvious panic. What poison is this? It demanded. Our ships are dying. That's not poison, Corinth replied calmly. That's memory. Every fragment carries the name of someone you mocked. Every piece of metal remembers the dead you dishonored. Your ships are dying because they've been infected with human grief. The commander's skin flashed pure white terror. This is impossible. The dead cannot harm the living. You're about to learn how wrong you are. Corinth nodded to Blackthorn, who activated the next phase of their assault. Across the human fleet, specialized projectile launchers came online, loaded with a very different type of ammunition. The projectiles weren't weapons in any conventional sense. They were artistic tools, massive engraving lasers and sculptors' plasma torches, designed to carve images into solid rock. Their target wasn't the Vexthari fleet, but the moon's hanging, silently beyond dot. As the first laser struck the nearest moon's surface, it began carving a face, weathered, kind, unmistakably human. The image of Corinth's brother, etched in stone the size of continents. The Vexthari commander's scream of rage cut through the static. The Vexthari defensive fleet emerged from behind Vexthal Prime like an angry swarm, 200 bioships rising from the planet's toxic atmosphere. Their bioluminescent patterns strobed in synchronized fury as they detected the human engraving operations on their sacred moons. Admiral Cassius Thorne's voice crackled across the fleet communication system from his flagship, the converted battlecruiser. Last rites, all vessels, maintain engraving operations. I don't care if they bring 1,000 ships, those faces are going on those moons. Commander Corinth watched the tactical display update as the alien fleet spread into attack formation. Each Vexthari vessel pulsed with neural energy, their living hulls preparing to unleash devastating psychic attacks alongside conventional plasma weapons. The humans had faced this before neural disruptors that could fry a crew's nervous system, leaving ships drifting with dead occupants. Ma'am, Blackthorn reported. Our memorial fragment cloud is still expanding. It's reached the outer defense stations, and their biosystems are showing signs of contamination. On the display, Corinth could see 3 Vexthari orbital platforms beginning to list as their living components succumb to the molecular grief embedded in the human memorial debris. The station's organic carters writhed in apparent agony, their bioluminescent guides flickering like dying stars. But the main fleet was adapting. The Vexthari had begun secreting a protective biofilm around their ships, creating barriers against the contaminated debris. Their formation tightened as they accelerated toward the human vessels. Neural weapons charging for a coordinated strike. Incoming. Neural burst. Grimm shouted, fleet-wide disruption in 15 seconds. Corinth gripped her command chair as the psychic wave hit the human fleet. The bridge lights flickered as she felt a cold presence trying to burrow into her mind. Alien thoughts, attempting to induce despair, hopelessness, the urge to simply surrender and die, around her. Crew members staggered as the neural attack found its mark, but the humans had prepared for this too. Activate grief amplifiers, Corinth ordered through gritted teeth. Each human vessel carried specially designed neural transmitters, not unlike the Vexthari's weapons, but tuned to a very different frequency. Instead of inducing despair, they broadcast the raw emotional resonance of human mourning, the love behind the loss, the fierce protectiveness that came with remembering the dead. The effect on the Vexthari was immediate and devastating. Their bioships began convulsing as the amplified grief overwhelmed their neural networks. The aliens, who had never experienced true loss or mourning, were unprepared for the sheer intensity of human emotional pain transformed into protective rage. Direct hit on the lead dreadnought, Blackthorn called out. Their biomatrix is. Wait, it's doing something strange. The alien flagship was changing, its sleek predatory lines becoming twisted and malformed. The grief amplifiers weren't just disrupting its functions, they were forcing the living ship to feel the accumulated sorrow of 300,000 human dead. The vessel's hull began sprouting what looked almost like tears, crystalline formations that caught and reflected light. But the Vexthari weren't finished. Their fleet commander, a massive bioship twice the size of any human vessel, pulsed with new patterns, not attack formations, but something else entirely. Communication patterns. They're calling for reinforcements, Grimm reported. Deep system vessels, coming in fast. And, Commander, they're not just military ships. The tactical display updated to show the incoming vessels, civilian transports, research stations, even agricultural bioships. The entire Vexthari civilization was mobilizing. They're treating this as an extinction event, Corinth realized. They think our grief is literally going to kill their species. Through the viewports, she could see the engraving operations continuing on the nearest moon. 3 human faces now stared down at the Vexthari homeworld, each one the size of Earth's continents. The mining lasers worked tirelessly, carving detail after detail into the lunar surface, eyes that seemed to follow observers, mouths frozen in eternal silence, expressions of peace that somehow managed to convey infinite loss. Ma'am, Blackthorn said quietly, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It's different. The main display filled with the image of an ancient Vexthari, its bioluminescent patterns dim with age. Unlike the aggressive commanders they'd faced, this one's coloration showed complex emotions, curiosity mixed with fear, anger tempered by what might have been respect. Human creatures. The elder spoke, its translated voice carrying new tones. I am First Feeder Kixithal, eldest of the consumption pools. Your grief poison spreads through our biosystems. Our ships die. Our stations fail. Our younglings grow sick with emotions they cannot comprehend. Corin stepped forward. Then you begin to understand what you did to us. We understand that your death worship is more dangerous than we calculated, and this contamination. And we will discuss terms. Corin's voice went cold. You scattered our dead like decorations. You mocked our grief. You broadcast our pain for entertainment. She gestured toward the moons, where a 4th face was beginning to emerge under the engraving lasers. There are no terms. There are only consequences. The elder's patterns flashed deep red rage mixed with something else. Desperation. Then you force us to deploy weapons we have never used against any species. Weapons that will end both our fleets. On the tactical display, massive bioships began emerging from the planet's deepest oceans. Vessels that looked less like conventional ships and more like floating cities, covered in growths that pulse with ominous energy. Admiral Thorne's voice cut through the tension. "Commander, whatever those things are, they're charging up something big. Energy readings are off the charts." Corinth looked at the growing faces on the moons, then at her own fleet, brave humans who had come to honor their dead and were now facing extinction for it. The choice was simple. All vessels, prepare for final engagement. We finished what we started. The Vexthari biocities rose from their oceanic depths like ancient gods awakening, their continent-sized hulls dripping with acidic seawater that ate through space itself. Commander Corinth watched in grim fascination as the massive organisms oriented themselves toward the human fleet, weapons that defied physics beginning to charge with malevolent energy. "Energy readings are impossible," Blackthorn reported, her augmented systems struggling to process the data. "Those weapons aren't just biological, they're tapping directly into the planet's core. They're going to turn Vexthal Prime into a weapon." Admiral Thorne's face appeared on the tactical screen, his weathered features set in determination. "Corinth, my sensors show those city ships can sterilize this entire system. We need to abort the engraving operations and retreat." "Negative, Admiral." Corinth's voice cut through the bridge chatter. "We retreat now, and we dishonor every human who died at Kepler. Our dead stay on those moons, or we join them." But she wasn't suicidal. As the biocities continued their charge cycle, Corinth was implementing a strategy that would have horrified any conventional military commander. She was turning the human fleet into a mobile graveyard. "Grim, patch me through. To all vessels, emergency broadcast to every human ship in this system." The communication ray crackled to life, carrying her voice to mining barges, passenger liners, even the small personal craft that had followed the fleet seeking vengeance. "This is Commander Corinth to all human vessels. We are about to face weapons that can crack planets. I won't lie to you, most of us won't survive the next hour. But before we die, we're going to do something the Vexthari will never forget." She paused, watching the tactical display as the alien biocities reached critical charge levels. Streams of energy began connecting them to the planet's core, turning the entire world into a massive cannon aimed at the human fleet. Every ship, military or civilian, is to begin emergency decompression protocols. Vent your life support, release your atmosphere, dump your water reserves. We're going to make this entire system uninhabitable. The order seemed insane, but the humans understood. If they were going to die, they would poison the system with their very presence, making it impossible for the Vexthari to live here after their victory. But that wasn't the real strategy. As the human ships began venting their life support into space, something unexpected happened. The released atmosphere contained trace amounts of the memorial fragments, microscopic particles of the original memorial ships, each one carrying the molecular signature of human grief. The vented gases created an expanding cloud of contamination that began drifting toward the biocities. "First feeder Kixethal is transmitting," Grim reported. "Audio only." The ancient alien's voice carried new tones of desperation. "Human creatures, your atmospheric contamination is reaching our city ships. Our living hulls are beginning to sicken, and this madness. You should have thought of that before you desecrated our dead," Corinth replied. But she was watching something else. The engraving operations on the moons were accelerating. The human mining crews had begun a desperate gambit. Instead of carefully carving individual faces, they were using plasma charges to blast entire sections of lunar surface away, creating crude but massive portraits visible from space. 7 moons, 7 faces of the dead, each one watching over the Vexthari homeworld with stone eyes that would endure for geological ages. The first biocity fired. The weapon was unlike anything in conventional warfare, stream of pure entropy that aged everything it touched by millions of years. It struck the human destroyer Final Rest, and Corinth watched in horror as the ship's hull corroded, its crew members withering to dust in seconds, their screams cut short by rapid cellular decay. But the weapon had an unexpected side effect. The entropy beam struck the memorial fragment cloud surrounding the destroyer, and the microscopic particles began to replicate themselves as they aged, spreading faster through the void. What had been a localized contamination became a system-wide infection, all biocities showing critical contamination. Blackthorn shouted over the combat alerts. "Their weapons are spreading our grief particles every time they fire." A second entropy beam lanced out, destroying the mining barge Remembrance's Pride and its crew of 200 volunteers. But again, the weapon amplified the contamination, spreading the molecular memory of human loss throughout the Vexthari system. Admiral Thorne's flagship, the Last Rites, moved to intercept the third beam. The massive battlecruiser's hull glowed with heat as the entropy weapon struck it. But Thorne had prepared for this moment. His ship's holds contained the ashes of 10,000 human dead from various conflicts, concentrated and weaponized. As the Last Rites died, it released its cargo in a final, devastating act of memorial warfare. The cloud of concentrated human grief spread toward the biocities like a plague, and where it touched their living hulls, the massive organisms began to weep, literally shedding biological tears, as they experienced true loss for the first time in their species' history. The biocities are crying, Grim said in amazement. Their hulls are producing some kind of crystalline secretion, but the Vexthari weren't finished. The remaining biocities began charging for a coordinated strike that would sterilize the entire human fleet in one devastating barrage. Corinth could see her death approaching entropy beams that would age her and her crew to dust in seconds. She looked at the moons one last time. 6 faces now stared down at the Vexthari homeworld. With the 7th nearly complete, whatever happened next, the dead would be remembered. All vessels, final transmission to Earth, she ordered. Tell them, we kept our promise. Tell them the faces of our dead will watch over this system forever. As the biocities reached critical charge, something unexpected happened. The contaminated city ships began firing on each other, their grief-infected biosystems unable to distinguish between human targets and their own kind. The massive organisms, driven mad by emotions they had never evolved to process, turned their entropy weapons on their own fleet. The first biocity to fire on its companions triggered a cascade, a friendly fire that lit up the system like a dying star. Entropy beams crossed and recrossed, aging entire sections of the Vexthari fleet to cosmic dust in seconds. Corinth watched in stunned silence as the aliens destroyed themselves. Poisoned by the very grief they had mocked, the Vexthari biocities tore themselves apart in an orgy of self-destructs. Their grief-contaminated neural networks unable to distinguish friend from foe. Entropy beams crisscrossed the void like deadly lightning, aging entire sections of the alien fleet to cosmic dust in seconds. But even as their city ships died, the remaining Vexthari forces launched a desperate counterattack. Commander Corinth gripped her command chair as plasma bursts from the surviving alien vessels hammered the human fleet. The converted passenger liner Memorial Dawn exploded in a cascade of fire, taking with it 300 families who had come to honor their dead. The mining barge Deep Sorrow lost its entire forward section to a neural disruptor, its crew screams cutting off abruptly as their nervous systems burned out. "Ma'am, we're losing ships faster than we can count," Blackthorn shouted over the combat alerts. The Kepler's Revenge, Lost Hope, and Final Journey are all showing critical damage. But the humans weren't just dying, they were taking the Vexthari with them. Each destroyed human vessel released its cargo of memorial fragments and concentrated grief into space, creating expanding clouds of contamination that poisoned everything they touched. The aliens' bioships writhed in apparent agony as they were infected by emotions their species had never evolved to process. Through the chaos, the engraving operations continued. The 7th and final face was taking shape on the outermost moon, an elderly woman's visage, kind eyes looking down at the battle with infinite sadness. The mining crews worked with desperate efficiency, knowing they might not live to see their work completed. A Vexthari assault group broke through the human defensive perimeter, their sleek bioships diving toward the engraving platforms with plasma sacs glowing. The lead alien vessel fired at the mining laser ray, carving the woman's face, its weapon striking the lunar surface and sending cascades of molten rock into space. "They're targeting the engravings," Grim reported. "There." That was too much for Admiral Thorne's replacement, Commander Elena Vasquez, aboard the heavy cruiser Undying Memory. Her ship turned away from its current engagement, racing toward the lunar engraving sites with weapons blazing. "No alien bastard touches our memorials," Vasquez transmitted. Her ship's experimental plasma cannons, originally designed for asteroid mining, tore through the Vexthari assault group. Bioships exploded in brilliant flowers of bioluminescent fluid. "They're dying," screams transmitted across alien neural networks. But the cost was devastating. The Undying Memory took return fire from 6 different directions, its hull cracking under the assault. Vasquez's final transmission came through static and flame. "For the dead of Kepler. For the The explosion lit up the lunar surface, casting the stone faces in stark relief against the darkness. 7 faces now watched over the Vexthari homeworld, their expressions serene despite the battle raging in the space around them. The surviving biocities, their neural networks partially cleansed by the death of their contaminated companions, began coordinating their remaining entropy weapons for one final strike. But they had underestimated the extent of the contamination. The grief particles released by dying human ships had spread throughout the system, carried by solar winds and gravitational currents. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid in the Vexthari system now bore traces of human loss, and as the biocities charged their weapons, they were drawing energy from contaminated sources. The first entropy beam fired at the human formation struck the destroyer last letter home. The ship aged to cosmic dust in seconds, but the beam itself became contaminated, carrying the molecular signature of human grief back toward its source. When the entropy energy returned to the biocity that fired it, the massive organism began to experience something unprecedented in Vexthari evolution. Morning, the biocity is changing, Blackthorn reported, her augmented system struggling to process the readings. Its whole patterns are shifting. It's producing some kind of memorial structures. Through the viewports, they could see the massive alien vessel sprouting crystalline growths that caught and reflected light, not weapons or defensive systems, but something purely aesthetic. The grief contamination was forcing the biocity to create monuments to its own losses, but this transformation came with a terrible cost. As the biocity learned to mourn, it began to understand what it had done to humanity. The weight of 300,000 human deaths pressed down on its expanding consciousness, and the massive organism began to shut down its own life support systems. In what can only be described as alien suicide, 2 more biocities followed suit, their neural networks overwhelmed by the accumulated grief of an entire species. They drifted into Vexthal Prime's gravity well, their massive hulls breaking apart as they fell toward the planet's surface. Like dying whales returning to the depths, the remaining Vexthari forces found themselves caught between the human fleet and their own dying biocities. Their formations broke apart as contaminated vessels turned on their companions, while others simply shut down their weapons and began broadcasting surrender signals. But Commander Corinth wasn't accepting surrender. All vessels, continue engagement, she ordered coldly. They showed no mercy to our dead. We show none to their living. The battle became a rout. Human ships, their crews driven by 3 years of accumulated rage, hunted down fleeing Vexthari vessels with methodical precision. The aliens' bioships, poisoned by grief and unable to function normally, died in brilliant cascades of bioluminescent fluid that painted the void in rainbow colors. By the time the last Vexthari vessel fell silent, nearly half the human fleet was gone. 200 ships and their crews, dead in the space around 7 moons that now bore the faces of humanity's losses. But as the surviving humans looked up at those stone visages, carved into celestial bodies that would orbit this system, until the stars themselves died, they knew the price had been worth paying. The dead would be remembered, and the Vexthari would never forget the cost of mocking human grief. First Feeder Kixthal-S bioship emerged from Vexthal Prime's upper atmosphere like a dying god, its massive hull covered in the crystalline tears that marked its species' first experience with genuine loss. The ancient aliens' vessel dwarfed even the biocities, a living moon that had spent millennia in the planet's deepest oceans, growing and evolving in isolation. Commander Corinth watched the readings on her tactical display with grim satisfaction. Her fleet was down to 87 vessels, most of them damaged, their crews exhausted from hours of continuous combat. But they had accomplished something unprecedented. They had forced an entire alien species to experience grief. Commander, Blackthorn reported, her voice hoarse from shouting orders during the battle. The First Feeder's ship is different. Its bio readings don't match anything we've seen. It's not just infected with our grief particles, it's been transformed by them. Through the main viewport, they could see the massive alien vessel approaching at a stately pace, its hull covered in formations that looked disturbingly familiar. As it drew closer, the truth became apparent. The bioship was covered in faces, thousands of them, grown from its own organic tissue, each one a perfect reproduction of a human visage from the memorial fragments that had contaminated the system. It's creating monuments, Grimm whispered in amazement. The alien ship is literally growing memorials to our dead. The communication array crackled to life, carrying First Feeder Kixthal-S voice. But now the ancient alien's tone was completely different, heavy with an emotion. its species had never known before. Commander Corinth, the translated voice carried undertones of profound sadness. I must speak with you. What you have done to us, what you have shown us, it changes everything. Corinth remained standing at her command station, unwilling to show weakness even now. If you want to surrender, First Feeder, the terms are simple. Complete withdrawal from all human space, reparations for the memorial ships you destroyed, and a formal apology broadcast to every human settlement. You misunderstand, human creature. I do not come to surrender. I come to mourn. The word seemed to cause the alien physical pain. Your grief poison has infected my entire species. We are dying, not from your weapons, but from the weight of understanding what we destroyed on the tactical display. Corinth could see the truth of the aliens' words. Across the Vexthari homeworld, biostructures were changing, growing the same memorial formations that covered the First Feeder's ship. The planet itself was transforming into a massive cemetery, its living cities sprouting monuments to the human dead they had mocked. We consumed our dead for nutrients, Quetzalcoatl continued. Because we believed death was merely a biological function, we had no concept of loss, no understanding of the bonds that survive beyond physical existence. But now we feel the weight of every life we ended, every memorial we destroyed. The humans you call the Kepler dead, we know their names now. We know their faces. We carry their memory in our very DNA. Blackthorn leaned close to Corinth's ear. Mom, the bioship's neural emissions are incredible. It's not just mourning our dead, it's mourning every death in its species history. Billions of Vexthari who were consumed instead of remembered. It's experiencing retroactive grief for its entire evolutionary past. The First Feeder's ship continued its approach, and now Corinth could see individual faces among the thousands, covering its hull. Her breath caught as she recognized one of them, her brother Marcus. His features perfectly reproduced in living tissue that pulsed with bioluminescent sorrow. You have given us the greatest gift imaginable, Quetzalcoatl transmitted, and the greatest curse. We can never return to what we were. The knowledge of loss, once learned, cannot be unlearned. My people are dying from the weight of accumulated grief, and yet we cannot stop creating these memorials. We must remember, we must honor, we must mourn. A new signal appeared on the tactical display, more Vexthari vessels rising from the planet's surface. But these weren't warships. They were transports, cargo haulers, even civilian craft. All of them were covered in the same memorial growths, their hulls transformed into floating cemeteries. My entire species comes to you now, the First Feeder continued, not to fight, not to flee, but to learn. Teach us how to properly honor the dead. Show us the correct rituals for remembrance. We will become the guardians of human memory in this system, if you will accept us. Corinth looked at the 7 faces carved into the moons above, then at the alien vessels approaching with their hulls covered in human memorials. The Vexthari hadn't just been defeated, they had been converted, transformed into something their species had. First Feeder, she said finally, your people mocked our death rituals. You called us primitive for honoring our dead. What makes you think we would trust you with our most sacred traditions? The ancient alien's response came heavy with genuine emotion, because we have learned the price of not honoring them. Every time we look at these faces growing from our ships, every time we see the monuments covering our world, we remember what we destroyed. We will carry this guilt until our species dies, and even then, our bioships will continue to grow these memorials long after we are gone. Corinth considered the offer. The Vexthari had indeed been transformed, their entire civilization turning itself into a living memorial to human loss. It was a form of justice she had never imagined possible. Very well, First Feeder, but understand you don't get to choose which dead you remember. Every human who died in this system, every memorial you destroyed, every ash you scattered, you will honor them all, forever. We accept, Quetzalcoatl replied immediately. We will become the eternal guardians of human memory in this system. But Commander, there's something else you must know. The contamination is spreading beyond our system. Every ship that leaves here carries traces of your grief particles. Every world we visit will be infected with the knowledge of loss. You have not just changed us, you have begun changing the entire galaxy. Corinth felt a chill run down her spine. They had come seeking justice for their dead, but they had unleashed something far greater, a plague of grief that would spread from species to species, teaching the galaxy the weight of loss and the importance of remembrance. Then let it spread, she said finally. Let every species in the galaxy learn what happens when you mock the dead. Let them all learn to mourn. The first feeder's bioship drew alongside the gravestone, its hull covered in thousands of human faces that watched with stone eyes and living tissue. It was beautiful and terrible, a monument to the power of grief made manifest in alien flesh. We will remember them all, Quetzalcoatl promised. Every name, every face, every story. We will teach our younglings to speak their names. We will grow gardens of memorial flowers on every world we inhabit. We will ensure that the human understanding of death and loss becomes the foundation of all future civilizations. Corinth nodded, looking up at the 7 moons that now bore the faces of humanity's dead. The battle was over, but the war for the galaxy's soul had just begun. 3 months after the Battle of Vextal Prime, Commander Nia Corinth stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed memorial station, watching the transformed alien world through reinforced transparistelle. The planet's surface bloomed with biostructures that defied description. Living cathedrals grown from Vexthari tissue, their spires reaching toward the 7 moons that bore humanity's faces. The cultural integration reports are unprecedented, reported Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the xenoanthropologist who had been studying the Vexthari transformation. They've developed funeral rites more elaborate than anything in human history. Each death in their society now triggers a 3-day mourning period, where the entire community grows memorial structures. Their cities are becoming vast cemeteries, but beautiful ones. Corinth nodded, her attention focused on the latest arrivals. 7 different alien species had sent diplomatic vessels to Vextal Prime, all seeking to understand the transformation that had occurred here. The grief particles had indeed spread, carried by Vexthari trade vessels to distant worlds. Entire civilizations were beginning to experience loss in ways they had never imagined. The Hegemony Council is requesting another meeting, Lieutenant Blackthorn reported, her cybernetic eye whirring as it processed the incoming transmissions. 16 species have reported memorial incidents in their territories. The crystalline collective's hive mind is experiencing individual grief for the first time in their evolution. The nomadic fleets have begun carving the names of their dead into their hulls. Instead of recycling them for materials, it was happening across the galaxy. Species that had treated death as a mere biological function were discovering the profound emotional weight of loss. Some were adapting, incorporating human-style mourning rituals into their cultures. Others were struggling, their societies fracturing under the weight of previously unknown emotions. Any word from Earth? Corinth asked. Admiral Morrison sends his congratulations. Blackthorn replied, the Colonial Defense Force has voted to name this the Mourning Crusade. They're calling you the Mother of Galactic Grief. Corinth grimaced at the title. She had come here seeking justice for 300,000 dead humans, not to reshape galactic civilization, but the consequences of their actions were undeniable. The Vexthari had become the galaxy's most devoted guardians of memory, their bioships carrying human faces to every corner of known space. First feeder Quetzalcoatl's latest communication played through the station's speakers. The ancient alien's voice had changed over the months, becoming deeper, more resonant with the weight of accumulated sorrow. Commander Corinth, the memorial gardens of Vextal Prime are nearing completion. We have grown individual monuments for each of the 300,000 humans who died at Kepler, plus the 2,000 who fell during our battle. Each memorial is unique, shaped by our understanding of their individual lives and losses. Through the viewport, Corinth could see the truth of the aliens' words. The planet's surface had become a vast garden of living monuments, each one a biostructure that pulsed with gentle light. The Vexthari had learned to extract memories from the grief particles, somehow accessing the emotional echoes of the dead and using them to create personalized memorials. We have also begun the great seeding, Quetzalcoatl continued. Our memorial ships carry samples of these living monuments to every world we visit. Soon, the entire galaxy will bloom with gardens of remembrance. The dead will never be forgotten again. Dr. Tanaka leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her amazement. Commander, what they're describing, it's impossible by any known biological process. The Vexthari seem to have evolved beyond their original genetic limitations. The grief contamination didn't just teach them to mourn. It gave them new capabilities, emotional evolution. Corinth mused, they're becoming something their species was never meant to be, and it's spreading. Blackthorn added, the latest reports from the hegemony suggest that exposure to grief particles is causing similar transformations in other species. The galaxy is changing. A new signal appeared on the communication array transmission from the edge of the system. Corinth recognized the vessel immediately, the converted transport final voyage, carrying the families of the Kepler dead who had joined the battle. They had stayed behind to witness the transformation, to ensure their loved ones were properly honored. Captain Sarachen's weathered face appeared on the display. Commander, we've seen enough. The memorial gardens are beautiful, and the Vextari are, well, they're different now, respectful, reverent. Our dead are being honored in ways we never imagined possible. Corinth nodded. Actually, ma'am, we'd like to stay. The first feeder has offered to teach us the new memorial techniques. Some of us want to learn how to grow living monuments. We think this might be the future of how humanity honors its dead. The irony wasn't lost on Corinth. The species that had mocked human death rituals were now teaching humanity new ways to remember the dead. The cultural exchange was transforming both civilizations. As the months passed, reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy. The merchant guilds had begun establishing memorial trading posts, where species could exchange techniques for honoring their dead. The warrior clans had incorporated grief weapons into their arsenals not to cause death, but to help their enemies understand the weight of the lives they had taken. But perhaps most importantly, the casual disregard for death that had characterized galactic civilization was disappearing. Wars were ending not through conquest, but through the mutual understanding of loss. Species were learning to negotiate rather than fight, recognizing that every death diminished the galaxy as a whole. Standing in the observation deck, watching the 7 moons rise over the memorial gardens of Vextal Prime, Corinth felt a profound sense of completion. The faces carved into those lunar surfaces would watch over the system for geological ages, ensuring that the lesson of this battle was never forgotten. The Vextari had mocked humanity's death rituals, calling them primitive and weak. Now their moons bore the faces of human dead, and their entire civilization had become a living monument to the power of grief. But more than that, they had become the galaxy's teachers of loss, spreading the understanding of mortality and memory to every corner of known space. Commander, Dr. Tanaka said quietly, do you think this is what the dead would have wanted? This transformation of galactic civilization? Corinth considered the question, looking up at the 7 faces that watched over the alien world. Marcus was there, her brother's features carved in stone that would outlast empires. Peaceful in death, but somehow still protective of the living. I think, she said finally, that the dead would want to be remembered. And if their memory can teach the galaxy to value life more to treat death with the respect it deserves, then yes, this is exactly what they would have wanted. The communication ray chimed with an incoming transmission from Earth. The message was brief, but significant. By order of the Colonial Defense Force and the Earth government, the memorial gardens of Vextal Prime are hereby designated as the official resting place for all human dead who die in deep space. The Vextari have been granted the honorary title of Keepers of Human Memory. As the transmission ended, Corinth smiled for the first time in months. The battle was over. The war was won, and the dead were finally at peace. But more than that, they had achieved something unprecedented they had taught the galaxy to mourn. The 7 faces on the moons would continue their eternal watch, and the memorial gardens would bloom with new life, ensuring that death would never again be mocked or forgotten. Humanity had not just avenged their dead, they had transformed the very concept of mortality. For every species in the galaxy in the end,